I'm Suzy Vance from Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living, and I'm here with Michael Wolff, who is the forester
City forester.
for Michigan City, Indiana. Hi, Michael.
How are you?
I'm good.
Very happy to be here.
Thank you. So tell me, what does a forester do?
I am, job description wise, I'm in charge of every tree in the city.
Okay.
That's it's short, but there's a lot of trees.
Yes.
The biggest part of my job is making sure safety is the big issue. The city has a lot of mature trees.
It does.
We don't use the word dead, we use mature.
Thank you.
And we have a lot of mature trees. And so
Dead trees or just trees that are aging?
aging, some of them aren't aging well though. So a lot of that, especially the city trees, that's my main focus, is to keep city trees up and our tree canopy going.
Uh-huh.
So that's the job description.
So city trees, I'm guessing, are on city property as opposed to your residential yard.
Right. Now residential, I have my hands in everybody's backyards.
What a great way to put it.
Yeah, part of what I have done is I've made myself available to the public if they have a tree in their yard that they think doesn't look well. I go out and I can do a quick assessment and say, yes, this tree's going to die, or you have, I was out at one yesterday and they just had a maple tree that has all the leaves have these big brown spots all over them. And they're called tar spots because it looks like the tree's been dripped on by tar. And so, yeah, it's not going to kill the tree, just doesn't look that well. And tar spots are very contagious. All the neighbors' trees probably have them also.
Even if they're not a maple.
On any of the maple trees down the street. But yeah, they'll jump. You'll get weird little things on other trees.
Okay.
So
I'm going to be looking for them. Actually, I'm not going to look for them because then I'll find them.
Exactly. But so that's really, I'm in charge of the trees, and I do a lot of calls from the public who say, hey, there's a tree out by my house that's dying or dropping limbs, and can you come look at it? And so I run out, I make maps of everybody's property, and then determine if it's their tree, their neighbor's tree, our tree, and then come up with a disposition for the tree.
I never knew there was such a position. This is really amazing. Does every city have this?
Not every city. A lot of them have arborists. Few have foresters. Minor difference, they're not quite interchangeable. I mean, on a technical aspect, an arborist is a person who cuts the trees.
Okay.
A forester is somebody who manages the trees. So I used to be an arborist. I'm an ISA certified arborist, but I don't cut trees anymore. At least not for anybody who, I'll cut up my own, but that's about it.
So how long have you been doing this for Michigan City?
I started this job for Michigan City in January of this year. So I'm a newbie.
Really? Where'd you come from?
I was working for a company by the name of Arbormetrics, who was a subcontractor for NIPSCO. So I was a NIPSCO forester.
Uh-huh.
And doing pretty much the same thing. I was the guy for NIPSCO who would go around and mark the trees in your yard that were under the power lines, and then you get I'm the guy that determines, yeah, we have to cut this tree. It's going to end up looking like a giant dinosaur came and took a big bite out of it. Right. So that was me. That was my fault.
All right.
So.
And what triggered your change?
I several years ago, my wife and I became missionaries. I had a job, corporate job, and in South Bend, and took a job as a director for a mission in Beverly, Kentucky, the Redbird Mission, and it offered me opportunities to do other things. And while there, I joined the fire department, and I'm going to digress. I'll back
That's
up just a
okay.
little.
I want your story.
I'm one of those guys that I enjoy learning new things, challenges, and if there's something I want to do, I go.
You go do
I
it.
just go do it. And fortunately, my wife and I, high school sweethearts, we've been married for 42 years, 6 kids, and she's very tolerant of my, you know, changing.
Shifting.
Because, like I said, I went from being vice president of a corporation to director at a mission in Kentucky. And while there, I joined the fire department, and because I had always wanted to go into a burning building. So,
Jeez, what an ambition.
yeah, and they just don't let you walk into them anymore. So unless you start the fire, and they frown on that. But so I joined the fire department, ended up learning the ins and outs, became a firefighter. Thought, hey, it'd be fun to drive the fire truck. So I got the training and drove the fire truck. And then we had an ambulance there, and it needed a driver. So I went through training, became a first responder ambulance driver. So I was doing that for the fire department. And one of the tasks, the fire department, we are the Redbird mission is in the middle of the Daniel Boone National Forest.
Okay.
So we're surrounded by federal property.
Uh-huh.
A lot of fires in the mountains on the federal property. Well, I became certified. It's called getting a red card. You have to go through a process and some training. And then you can fight fires on federal property. So I did that so I could fight wildfires on national property. Involving in that and being on the thing, we had a gentleman with Alzheimer's who wandered away from a nursing home in the mountains.
Oh.
And they called us up, asked if we could come assist, look for this guy, which we did. We found him safe. He was very confused. It was kind of cute that he remembered following his mule up the hill, and then he lost his mule, and he spent the afternoon looking around calling this mule that he had taken with him. And so that led to my next task, which was I joined the Mountain Search and Rescue Squad. And I learned to be a dog trainer and trained dogs to do search and rescue.
Uh-huh.
Led to, I have 9 FEMA certifications, and I've done search and rescue, mountain search and rescue, dog training for that. Took my dog down during Katrina and did house-to-house searches for bodies. And the sad part about doing search and rescue is that probably 95% don't end well. They're more of a recovery mission than a search.
Right.
But, and that's always, you get a lot of people joining the search squad until they find a dead body. And then your membership drops way back down. You got to start over again. So, but I did that. And in this mix, and working with the firefighting,
Uh-huh.
not far from where we were at was a ranger station for the um, National Forest. Uh,
Okay.
kind of a neat detail. The ranger station used to be Henry Ford's hunting lodge.
Okay.
And the mountains that around Beverly, Kentucky, down in Clay County, is where Henry Ford, he had crews down there that got the oaks, walnuts, wood for Model A's and Model T's. So, and when he moved out, when they had logged the hills, he didn't need the property, so he gave the property to them. And the mission that we were on, Redbird Mission, um, the it was named after the guy who's doing the deal for the one of his people. Um, he called it. His name was Queen, and the town actually, the only thing in it is the mission is Queendale. So Queen
Okay.
named the property, and so it's all legal that we, you know. But working with them, I got talking, and I started to do tree work. Started to learn about trees,
Uh-huh.
and the mission, in a way, we had several hundred acres of mountains,
Mm-hmm.
and it became my responsibility. We decided we would uh, log different mountains areas, a couple hundred acres at a time, and use that money revenue for the mission. So I had to learn logging, which I worked with the National Forest, because our property and theirs butted, and you don't dare log their trees. Um, so I got into logging and did. It's called cruising, where you walk the mountain and you say, okay, there's a grove of maples over here, and these are where the oaks are, and everything has to be measured, and you have to figure how many board feet are coming out, um, which was all new to me. I had never measured the DBH of a tree, that's diameter, breast height, had never measured it at all. And they gave me, they said, well, this is a tape, this is how you do it. And so I started cruising the mountain for the forestry. And then again for the mission, so we knew how many dollars we were going to acquire. And so that started that part of it. And they gave me a lot of training then on chainsaw use and equipment. And when my time at the mission ended, I moved back to Indiana and went from the corporate world. I said, okay, from here on, I'm doing trees. And then got my certification, my ISA certification. And then I actually have two. I have what's called a utility forester also. It's an additional one. And then an additional tree risk assessment certification. And but yeah, the opportunity while I was there, I also in Kentucky, because the mission was so far out we were 45-minute drive from the nearest town,
Okay.
which would have been Manchester, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
If you called the Manchester police, they might come that night. They're most likely going to come the next day. Um, the mission, Redbird Mission, was large. We had a medical facility, pharmacy, which we had a lot of drugs in, school, K through 12 school. And so I needed to do something to help that. So I became a special deputy, Clay County special deputy, uniform, gun belt, the whole bit. A little bit like Barney Fife. And, but so, yeah, fire department, ambulance driver, mountain search and rescue, joined the police force, Uh, Now, they did make you qualify, which was additional training.
Uh-huh.
I had to go down to the Kentucky State Police training post and qualify, but none of it's, my attitude has always been, if these other guys can do it, surely I should be able to do it too. You know, I have it, I don't know if it's confidence or arrogance, but so whatever, like I said, whatever I wanted to do, you know, I got my opportunity. I've been inside a burning building. Um, got to crawl around, and you crawl around, which I didn't expect, because there's smoke in the building.
So
The way to get around is you crawl,
Uh-huh.
and so I had that experience, and been to a lot of car accidents in the mountains, and where the coal trucks had left the road and slammed into something, and had that experience. Got to do a helicopter had crashed on the mountain, and we got to go do I was working both search and rescue and for the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to go find the helicopter, find the guy, and then, which led to a whole bunch of different problems because he was disoriented. We couldn't determine if he had other people in the helicopter, which we couldn't find. So, you know, we're all looking around for somebody who may or may not be there. And, but it was great. I just enjoyed it. And like I said, my wife put up with all of it.
So, how did you get from Kentucky to Michigan City?
Well, in my experience, I started with a tree crew. I live in the town of North Liberty, and I was.
How did you get to what happened to move you to North Liberty?
Well, actually, I grew up in North Liberty.
Okay.
Moved to Kentucky.
Got it.
My term at the mission was ending.
Uh-huh.
And my dad had fallen, had broken his hip. My parents were getting older. And my wife and I said, well, it's time we go back to North Liberty, because it will be very shortly before I anticipate we'll be taking care of our parents. And
so you're here.
So we're here. And while here, I started working for Potato Creek State Park.
Okay.
Which is, I would still be there, except parks don't pay very well. And being a family guy with 6 kids, you really need a little more. You need a little more income than that. And on my way to the park, there was a bucket truck parked at the park. And so I just went up to the guy at the bucket truck and said, hey, you guys hiring? I'd like to, you know, learn. I work for the park. I've done tree work. What can we do? So I worked for them and started what's called line clearance tree trimming. And went through that, worked my way all the way up from a guy who knows absolutely zero dragging brush to, you know, a trimmer, to a foreman, to a general foreman. At one point near the end, I quit the tree business, started my own company doing it, family-owned business, and it was me and my kids, and that was going well. My oldest son, Michael, he passed away, and when he passed away, it kind of took the wind out of the sail for the family-owned business. And so I went to work again for tree companies, and my younger son was working, and then he got hit by a tree. It was a accident. He didn't quite walk away from it. He was involved in an accident on the job where they said, okay, we learn, you know, in the business about all these things that are points of possible, they're things that aren't done exactly right that cause accidents.
Got it.
And that group did everything wrong. They were getting ready to go to lunch. They were passing by this tree, had the rope already in it, and they said, hey, before we go to lunch, let's take this tree down. Called some people back over, cut the tree. When he pulled the rope, they put him on the rope, and when he pulled the rope, the tree actually hit another tree that was dead, a large oak tree, and the large oak tree hit him square in the head. I literally drove him into the ground. I was at that time general foreman, and I was coming to check on these crews that were back in the woods, and as I pulled up, the foreman who was running the job handed me the phone. He didn't speak English very well, and he handed me the phone and he said 911, talk to them. Handed me the phone, and I said, what? And he said, hurt back there. So I'm talking to 911, heading into the woods to find out what happened. Come through the end of the opening, see the person, see the site, saw this guy on the ground, and as I approached it, realized it was my son. And they had his helmet. He got hit. He was wearing all his safety gear like he should, but the impact literally just shattered everything. The hard hats that they wear have ear muffs and stuff. They were all scattered. My son was still on the ground, and from being a first responder and things and training, you do a lot of first aid, CPR training. And so I kind of went into training mode and talking to the 911 operator, explaining, yes, we need an ambulance. I was able to give her, because it was my son, I knew his age, I knew, I did my assessment, had everything, said, yeah, we're going to have to carry him out. He's conscious, he's alert, but he's not totally coherent, And I explained he got hit by a large tree. And this tree honestly would have crushed a car. It would have crushed a car. And the impact, like I said, drove him into the ground. He was in really good physical shape. He's my son Eli is about, well, he's now an inch shorter than he used to be. The literally shrank him down, crushed his spine together enough to shrink him down an inch. But he was a bodybuilder, worked out all the time, bench press well over 400 pounds, worked out with 400 pounds. I can't move it. He worked out with it. And he's a stocky guy, and that the grace of God saved his life, because like I said, it would have crushed a car. The impact gave him a stress fracture in the leg, which they didn't even splint. The doctor in the hospital said, we're not going to splint it. We're not going to put him in a cast. He's so strong and his legs are so heavy, so big, that's what's going to, that'll hold it until it heals. And had a spinal compression, and he's recovered. He was in the hospital for a few weeks, getting that taken care of. And but I got to the hospital, walked in and said, I'm here to see the guy got hit by the tree, and the guy standing at the counter was a doctor, and he said, he's back here, he's in really astounding shape. He said, it's a miracle. He said, I have seen people, I've had other people hit by trees in my career. And he said, nobody's ever been alive. And they said, when they told me we have a guy in ER hit by a tree, he said, I expected to walk in to find a vegetable or a cadaver. And he said, he looked at me and said, what am I doing here? So,
Your son did.
yeah. And
Oh
so
my.
but afterwards, he didn't want anything to do with trees. So, yes.
That's okay.
Yeah, he doesn't, he stays away from trees. And the family business is like, well,
No.
no. And so I ended up selling it, going to work for Arbormetrics,
Uh-huh.
and then transitioned from there as a tree planter. Once at Arbormetrics is where I got all my certifications
Okay.
while working for NIPSCO. And the process to get the job, the city and NIPSCO work together all the time. Obviously,
sure.
there's a lot of NIPSCO trees
Right.
in power lines, and we would work back and forth. And I had a large tree. It was a large walnut tree in town that needed to come down. It was the city's responsibility, or NIPSCO's responsibility, to remove the tree. And I had the tree crews who had the skill to take this tree down next to the power line, not a big deal. But I called the city and said, hey, this is Mike, I've got a tree issue. We need to take this large walnut tree down. Can you send your city guys out with the big front loader to pick this wood up and haul it out of here? Because we don't think we can move it. And in our conversation, he said, yeah, we don't actually have anybody in town, an arborist or anything. And I said, yeah, I've been trying to call the arborist, and wasn't getting anywhere. So that's why I called him, different department. And he said, yeah, we don't have one. He goes, but the job's open and you're perfect for this. If you want, he said, I would recommend you applying. And went home, talked to my wife about it, applied. Now I'm the city forester. So, yeah. So,
Yay for Michigan City.
yeah, they, and the job is complete. Being a city forester is different than anything I've ever done in regards of how things are done. Everything, I'm now, I'm a city guy now. Everything
Not a
runs,
country guy?
everything, you don't get the choice of actually making a decision and acting on it. Everything has to go through a committee, and that committee meets with another committee, and then somebody else has to say, yeah, we're approving you to do this, and it's like, oh man, I just want to get this tree down,
Right.
I don't need all this. The red tape's there, but I've learned to, well, I'm learning. I can't say I truly have learned this, because it still drives me insane.
Well, you're a free spirit.
And yes, and I went from being the boss in the corporate world. If you're an employee and I say, I need this information, I've got a meeting tomorrow morning, get that to me so I can, I know what I'm doing. And I knew it would be done. Or if I needed to buy a new semi, I'd say, I'd call up the office and say, hey, we need this, order this, and it was done. Or I have a meeting and I'm gonna have to fly someplace, we could just take care of it. You just did it. Doesn't work that way for the city, And rightfully so, a lot of it, because we're not using our corporate money, we're using the city's money.
You're using people's money.
Right, the city, I mean,
Yeah.
the cities.
You're using my money.
Exactly. I'm using, and I don't live in the town, so I'm not using my money anyway. But that's something that I had to be conscious of. And the mayor, she is, she's my boss, so I answer to the mayor, and she's wonderful to work with, and but she makes it. She's very clear about budgets and this being your money.
Yes.
You know, are we going to do this? Is it economical? Is it a smart move? Should we do this? You know, what if we don't do this?
Yes.
What happens to, you know?
And are there other options?
Right.
Right.
And if you're going to buy this, where are you getting the money? What money do you plan to use? Is it in your budget? And because I'm the first forester in a long time, honestly, I have no budget. So I don't have, everything I do steals money from somebody else.
And uses equipment from elsewhere. I
Oh,
bet.
somebody else's equipment, somebody else's manpower, you know, comes out of their budget. And so, I mean, I understand it. But like I said, the mayor is just, she's been in the business, city business, I'll call it, a lot longer. And she's got a much better grasp on, you know. And she'll often tell me, yeah, we can do that, but, you know, oh, no, you're not going to do that to me. So, but yeah, that's the long and the short, or the long and the long
That's
of
great.
me to how I got to Michigan City.
That's amazing. That's quite a story. And your son
So-
today?
Son today is, he still suffers from some of the effects. He has backaches, that kind of thing. But 98% healed up. He has been, up until recently, he just changed jobs, but he's been a chef. He went to school, became a chef.
That's different than trees.
And my son, he follows in my footsteps very much, in that anything he wants to try, he just goes and does it, you know.
You trained him well.
So actually it has gone through the years of training. If I go clear back to my early marriage, when my wife and I was a carpenter, was a journeyman carpenter, decided, and that's where it all changed, because I decided I didn't want to do carpentry for the rest of my life. It's a great job, and it's a good income, not what I wanted to do. So I went back to school and got my degree in accounting, and then
That's definitely different.
oh yeah, went from that to accounting, got my first job in accounting. Being that I was a journeyman carpenter, familiar with construction, blueprints and things. The company was a supply company, and I was working as their company controller at that time, and I had taken some checks to the vice president, and I said, I need these signed, and I'm standing there waiting, he's signing. I'm looking at what he's got going on his desk, and I looked at a set of blueprints, and I said, that door swings the wrong way. You can't do that. And he says, what door? And I showed him, and he goes, do you know what you're looking at? And I said, yeah. I said, that door swings the wrong way. And he looks at it, he goes, it swings the wrong way. You're correct. Nobody caught that, because they were getting ready to start manufacturing the doors for that building, and nobody had caught it. And he said, would you be willing to become a project estimator? And I said, sure, you know. So I shifted from the accounting office to estimating construction work. And went again, had to learn all the fire codes and safety codes and everything that related to doing the construction estimating. And became vice president of that corporation after a couple years. About 5 years into it, I was moved up from
Estimator.
estimator to vice president and did their commercial estimation, and then went to work for the competition. Um,
Meaning
and
they weren't so smart as to have a non-compete clause?
they correct. And I took over as a general manager for the competition for the South Bend office. And so again, there was the owner of another corporation who I was working for. He was my boss. And while there doing that job, one of my employees brought me a flyer from Redbird Mission. And he said, I found a job for you. He said, read this job description. This is you. And so I read it, and it's like, wow, that describes me to a T. The mission, and I'm going to digress. Well, before I changed jobs, went to work for there, VP of this company, working 50 hours a week, went back to school full time, and I did. So I'm working 40, 50 hours a week, going to school full time.
Learning,
I went into ministry,
okay.
and in that process, I became a licensed minister, went to seminary. Now I'm at this other company. A mission in Kentucky needs somebody who is got the background in ministry, can do construction estimating, running large crews. So I went, the process of getting the job at the mission was, I'm going to combine everything you shouldn't talk about, politics and religion. But I went down there with my wife, and I talked to my wife. I brought home this flyer from this place, and I said, look at this. Here's a job in Kentucky. They're looking for a missionary to come and be a director at this mission. And she said, well, you've never been a director at a mission. And I said, read what they're saying. And we read the application or the job description, and said, I tell you what, let's just go down this weekend and we'll check it out. Keep in mind, the company I had been working for, I had changed. And since I had started the new job, I was working 6 days a week, every week. Had taken, in the couple of years I was there, had not taken a vacation, not taken a holiday, holidays I took, but I was never took a sick day, hadn't used any vacation time. And I said to my wife, let's go down. We'll just leave on Friday. We'll drive down Friday, show up Saturday morning at the mission, check it out, see what this is about. And I did. And halfway down, we were driving through Kentucky, and my boss calls me and he says,
Where are you?
Where are you? And I said, well, right now I'm on Highway 75 in Kentucky. And he said, well, that's what your secretary said. He said, why are you taking a vacation? He said, you're never gone. He said, I called your office and they said you were gone. He said, I had to call you to find out where you were at. And I said, yeah, I'm on my way down to Kentucky. And I said, I'll talk to you next week about it. And we get to Kentucky, get to our hotel room in Manchester, drive the next morning out to the mission. We show up at the mission, place is vacant. There's nobody there. And We drive around the mission. Uh, Found, like I said, there's literally nobody there. We couldn't find anybody. We drove around, looked at everything, left, went back to the hotel room, and said, "Well, we're going to throw out a fleece." And my wife and I prayed about it, and we said, "If that's where you want me to be,
Give me a sign.
Something's got to happen."
Give me a sign.
Right. I go back the next morning. My wife and I drive back to the mission. Um, we drive around, and we're looking, and we see two guys walking, and like, well, there's a couple people. At least we see somebody. Let's go ask them. And rolled up to them, rolled down the window, handed them the flyer, and said, you know, "I'd like to see, is there anybody I can talk to? I see that you had a job opening. I'd like to talk to somebody about this position." And the guy said, "That position?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Great." He said, "You're in the right place. This is Redbird Mission." He said, "That director position is mine. I'm leaving in a month and a half." He said, "I'm leaving. So you would need to talk to the head person and have a meeting with me and the head person, and we can get this process rolling." And I said, "Okay, how do we get to this head person?" He goes, "Let me introduce you to the head person." The guy he was walking with was the head. And we talked. They gave me a tour of the mission. And they said, "Can you come back next week? And we could have a meeting." I said, "Well, honestly, I live 8 hours north of here. Is it possible to have another?" And he said, "Give me an hour." Called everybody together, had a meeting. So I had the meeting, had my job interview that day. They showed me around and said, the this group will have to talk to the board of directors, and then we'll let you know. The board of directors meet. After the board of directors meet, we'll let you know how how this is going to turn out. And I said, "Great." We left. I drove to Indianapolis, where the owner of the corporation lived, showed up at his place, and said, "Yeah, I know we talked." I said, "I was in Kentucky. I'm going to take a job." They hadn't offered this to me yet. I said, "I'm going to take a job as a director at a mission in Kentucky." And I said, "I'll give you 4 weeks notice so that we can do a hiring thing and find a replacement for me. And I don't want to leave the corporation high and dry. I can get a new person in. I can do a couple weeks of training with them, and leave it in good standing."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, is it more money?" He said, "I'll give you more money." And I said, "No, it's like a $50,000 a year pay cut. So that's not going to help." I said, and he knew that I had gone through the seminary and was now a licensed minister. And he said, "No, if you want to do it," he said, "more power to you." He said, 4 weeks, just tell me when your last day is and send me an email, and I'll send it out to all the other people. And so got the job. I quit my job. 2 weeks later, the mission calls me and offers me the position.
Thank goodness.
Oh, yeah. And I was so confident, though, because,
Yeah.
like I said, I threw out this fleece. I knew it was going to happen. And we moved back. We were packed up. My wife started packing things up, making arrangements. And so by the time we left, we were ready.
Yeah.
And when we did go down, we left 2 kids here. I had two girls. One's a junior and one was a senior in high school. They didn't want to leave and go to Kentucky and spend a year
Another
at another
school.
school.
Right.
And I said, okay, you know, that's kind of an issue because I don't want to leave two teenage girls alone.
Loose.
And, you know, we had sold our house. We had, you know, I have no place for you to live. And they were able to find an apartment in the town of Walkerton that's just
Yes.
like 3 blocks from the high school. And one of the other guys that I worked with who was local, he said, don't worry about them. He said, give the girls my number. He said, 24 hours. He said, any day, anytime, whatever they need, if they call me, I'll take care of it. That's like, okay, you know. And so we headed to Kentucky with a couple less kids, and but it went well. It was a good time in Kentucky.
That's great.
But yeah, and had good friends who uh, we moved down there, and when we actually left to come back, one of the other guys who was at the mission showed up at my house. He said, "You, when are you moving?" I said, "I got to get a truck for this weekend," and I said, "We'll be packing up this weekend." So that's what I thought. He said, "Don't get the truck. Don't worry about it." He said, "I'll be over." And his name is Mike Wagers. Mike showed up at my house with his dad and another guy, a truck, a huge enclosed trailer, uh, and
And you moved.
he said, you know, let's get you loaded. And I said, well, that's great, except this trailer, I can't pull it. And he goes, oh, I'm going back up. He said, I'm going to Indiana with you to unload it. So they drove it from Kentucky up to my parents' house, actually, in Indiana, unloaded it, and got back in their truck and drove away. So, yeah, and it's really good friends, just good friends. I mentioned that my son passed away, my oldest son passed away, and another good friend of mine lives in Charlotte. And when my son passed away, I called Scott. Again, we grew up together, ran around together. They ended up moving, his family moved to Charlotte, North Carolina after high school, and maybe 10, 5 to 10 years after high school. Scott moved to Charlotte.
Uh-huh.
And so he'd been in Charlotte for a decade by the time my son passed away. And Scott and his wife Debbie had a son who passed away years earlier. A fifth grader, I believe he was. Isaiah missed the school bus, and in Isaiah's, you know, the wisdom of a fifth grader, decided he'd just take the car, go to school, and nobody will know that he got up late and missed the bus. And driving to school, he blew a stop sign, got T-boned, and killed him. So I was there with Scott when his son passed away. And I called Scott first thing and said, hey, called you, found out a couple hours ago Mikey passed on. And he said, when? How? I said, I actually don't have all the information yet. I said, the police just literally came to the door, said, your son's no longer here. They're going to get back with me with more information. So I called Scott, and Scott said, he said, yeah, don't worry about it. This would have been 8, 9 o'clock at night. Keep in mind, it's an 8-hour drive. 8 o'clock the next morning, somebody's knocking on my door. Scott and his dad had driven all the way up. You know, that's a 16-hour drive from Charlotte. They drove from Charlotte, show up at my door next morning for coffee. Said, we're here. They brought donuts and they wanted coffee. So, but yeah, a very good friend. Very good friend. Just showed up at my house. So.
And this is a lesson when stuff like that happens, that it's important to live as you do, which is to follow your heart and do what speaks to you.
I agree fully.
Well, your life says that.
And I hate to use the word fortunate, because I don't believe in luck, but
Blessed would be
I
a
have
good
been
word.
truly blessed, truly blessed,
Mm-hmm.
with good friends who will just drop everything and do whatever.
Yeah.
If that means they have to drive all night long to get here in time to have breakfast with me, they'll do that.
And so we in Michigan City are blessed to have you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
If nothing else, taking care of our trees.
And that's what I do, and that's why I bought the shirt, because
This is good. What does it say?
it says,
Speak for the trees.
yep, I speak for the trees from the Lorax, Dr. Seuss, and that's really how I feel. I take the job very seriously, and I do look after literally every tree. So it's been good.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. If somebody needs to have some attention about their tree or
Yep.
wants to chat with you, how do they find you?
I'm at City Hall, so just call the City Hall and
Okay.
say, I want to talk to the forester.
Awesome. Wow. Take care of your trees.
Exactly. Thank you.
Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. I'm Suzy Vance, and I love fascinating people like Michael. So if you know somebody, please let me know. Thank you. See you next time.